Once a king in Narnia, always a king in Narnia. But don't go try using the same route twice. Indeed, don't try and get there at all. It'll happen when you're not looking for it. And don't talk too much about it, even amongst yourselves. And don't mention it to anyone else unless you find that they've had adventures of the same sort themselves. What's that? How will you know? Oh, you'll know all right. Odd things they say, even their looks will let the secret out. Keep your eyes open. Bless me, what do they teach them at these schools? Welcome back everyone. In today's video I'm carrying on my reread of the Chronicles of Narnia series. We are now on Book 2, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Part 1. Summary. Peter, Susan, Edmund and Lucy Pevensie are evacuated from London in 1940 to escape the Blitz, and are sent to live with an old professor, Diggory Kirke, at a large country house. Soon after arriving, the children explore the house, and Lucy stumbles inside a wardrobe, which leads her into the magical world of Narnia, where she befriends a faun and learns from him that Narnia is under the dominion of the White Witch, who has cursed Narnia to suffer an eternal winter. When Lucy tells her siblings of her travels, they disbelieve her, and Edmund begins teasing her, until he also stumbles into Narnia. Once there, Edmund meets with the White Witch, eats her magic food, and is told to return with his brother and sisters. Edmund refuses to support Lucy by telling the others the truth about Narnia. But soon after, all four of them are forced to hide in the wardrobe, and find themselves in Narnia. There they embark on a quest to save Narnia from the White Witch, with the aid of Aslan, a lion and true king of Narnia. Part 2. Mysteries and Enchantment. What I like most about rereading the Chronicles of Narnia, and even back I think when I was a kid, is the beautiful simplicity of the world and the writing and just the whole thing. Lewis does a really good job in revealing just enough about Narnia to keep you interested in the world, but also holding enough back so that you're always wondering about what the meaning of certain things are, why things are a certain way. So you're always in the thrall of this world that he's created. This is one reason why I do have some issues with The Magician's Nephew. It was that the attempt to explain things that in this novel are just kept as mysteries does sort of, not cheapen, but rub off a bit of the sheen, or the magic sheen, of the series a bit. It's nice to have these elements that are just unexplained, especially I think in a children's fantasy book, because when you're a kid you're incredibly imaginative, and so to have a world that doesn't explain everything just engages you a lot more and makes you think a lot more. So I really enjoy that, and this book really, that magical feeling really comes out for me in this book. Part 3. Mythologies. So once again we do have to talk a little bit about the Christian inspiration and mythology that Lewis draws from in Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. The central thing in this book is the resurrection and sacrifice of Jesus Christ, which we see when Aslan sacrifices himself to save Edmund from getting killed by the White Witch, because he betrays his siblings, and then there's a rule that says if you betray someone, then you should die, that should be your punishment, and the White Witch does that. She's like, I want to kill him. Aslan then says, no, I will do that, and she kills Aslan instead. So we have a Christ metaphor going on here, but again, even though that's there, I don't think it's particularly moralizing. Yes, it's taking inspiration from a Christian idea about sacrifice, about sin, but the way that it comes across doesn't seem particularly preachy. And again, I think the core message of the book here is a good one. Edmund is a character who does something wrong and wants forgiveness. He feels bad for it and wants to make up for it. Then you have an evil tyrant, the Queen, demanding that he should die and not be forgiven. And Aslan sacrifices himself and breaks that kind of demanding blood sacrifice by getting rid of the witch. So you end up with a message of forgiveness, which I think is good regardless of your religious beliefs. So again, it doesn't really bother me, and I don't think it should bother you as a reader, even if you see that there's a connection there. It's still a good message. It's still an interesting take on the idea itself as well. Of course, there are also other elements of mythology going on here, not just the Christian stuff. Narnia is a complex world in terms of the things it's drawing from. There's elements from Norse mythology, elements from British folklore and fairy tales. So all of these things combined make for a much more complex world than just a Christian mirror, which is how some people, I think uncharitably, tend to portray the series. Part 4. 4 protagonists. So unlike the last book where we just followed 2 people, in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe we follow 4 people. We have Peter, Susan, Edmund and Lucy. I would say of the 4, Edmund and Lucy are pretty well fleshed out. In fact, Edmund especially, because he has the whole betraying his siblings and then repenting and then becoming a much better person. Lucy is just a good character from the beginning. She's very tenacious, she's very fun. Whereas Peter and Susan I don't think are as well fleshed out as their siblings are. They're not poor characters by any means, but they just don't really have the time to demonstrate a lot of diversity in their character traits in a way that the other siblings do get a lot more time to do that. I think part of that is just, if you have 4 protagonists and it's a very short book, it's going to limit your time to develop all of them. So it's not a massive criticism, and I can understand why it's a problem. And I also think this is something that gets a little bit better in the following books, because they'll all appear sometimes in later books, and they will have more time in those books to flesh those characters out. But at least in this book, I just think, of the 4, those 2 characters are a little bit meh. Although I did call this section Protagonists, I'd also like to talk a little bit about the antagonist of this one, which is the White Witch, or Jadis as she was called in the previous book. I really like the White Witch. I don't really need to say too much more about this because I already have, but she's really good in this one, and this is the book where she really shines. In The Magician's Nephew, she's much more comical. In this book, she is much darker. In fact, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe does have a much darker tone than The Magician's Nephew. You know, you have the White Witch demanding blood sacrifices, you have Aslan getting tortured and killed at one point, you have hags and monsters of all kinds. It gets pretty dark, especially for a kid's book at the time. In fact, I think even at the time it was written, people complained that this was not really the sort of thing that children should be reading, because too much death. But I like that. I like how dark she is and twisted she is in this book. She's not the most diverse villain in terms of her psychology. She's just bad. That's it. Just bad. Just likes power. Just likes to turn people to stone. But she's good in that role. She's a good archetype of that kind of villain, and she's one of my favourite villains, and one of my favourite villains in the series. So overall, we have some really good characters in this book. Edmund and Lucy are probably better than Diggory and Polly from the previous book, because they're a little bit more complex in their psychologies. Yes, Peter and Susan, meh, but generally speaking, the character work in this book is really good, and it's great to follow these characters. Part 5, Conclusion. Ultimately, I do think that The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe deserves its place as a classic of children's literature. The world of Narnia is, while not necessarily the most complex world for readers of adult fantasy, for what it is, children's literature, it does exactly what a fantasy world for children's literature should do. Be magical, be enchanting, make your brain light up and with wonder, all that kind of stuff. I also like the story itself. I think that the moral message, while yes, has Christian elements, still a good message, still a good story, and also not too preachy. There's some children's literature out there which is incredibly preachy. There's adult literature that's incredibly preachy too, so it's really not that bad. I do have some niggles with characterization and a few plot hole things that bug me, but none of these are significant, so overall just a great book, and one of the best of the series. Okay, that's it for today's video. Please let me know in the comments what you think of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. This is probably the one that most of you have read, so if you have just read this one, consider watching my reviews of the other ones, and also consider reading the other ones, because I would say that, from memory, this isn't the best that the series has to offer by any stretch, even if it's a pretty good one. Don't forget to give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel for updates on new videos. But that's it for me now, so take care everyone, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Let's go!